Hi everyone! Welcome back to another Speed Paint with Maximum Panic! Today's subject matter is another alternate universe featuring some of the core 4 and a few more. This AU in particular, if you guys have never heard of it, is RWBY. RWBY is an animated series created by Rooster Teeth about teenagers who go to a school called Beacon Academy to train and become huntsmen and huntresses in order to defend the world from these demonic things called the Grimm. My friends and I have been low-key invested in this setting for a while, and way back in ye olden days of 2014, we actually made a plethora of characters to fit into that very setting. For in particular, I drew in this piece of artwork about 5 years back, and I'll be attempting to redraw this piece today with some more updated designs. Now, with every series, there's a bit of lore that goes with it, or facts about the universe that influence the character designs in their stories. In the case of RWBY, every character is based off another figure from any given fairy tale, folklore, or mythology. For example, RWBY's main 4 girls, Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, are based off Red Riding Hood, Snow White, Beauty of Beauty and the Beast, and Goldilocks respectively. These teams have a central theme that play off the character's traits, so that's cool. There's also a tradition that the characters are named after colors, or their names somehow allude to certain colors. The 4 characters I'm focusing on in this piece are Saige, Terumi, Raine, and Mira, who when put together make up Team Storm. Raine and Terumi, aka Twice character Saoirse, are 2 members of the core 4 who, if you've seen that video by now, you might be familiar with, but I haven't introduced you guys to Saige or Mira yet, and I'm really excited to do that, so let's get down to it. Saige Crystallos is probably the 3rd oldest OC I've ever created, actually. She's a very cool and collected type of character who made it a point to keep a level head in given situations and provide a sense of stability for her team. As far as I know, she hasn't existed in any universe outside of RWBY for reasons even I don't understand, to be honest. I guess I attached her to this universe so heavily that I felt weird about detaching her from it. I don't know. Saige was named after a type of flower with the same name, Azure Sage. That's kind of the reason her color palette here is mostly blue. Saige herself, when I originally wrote her, was based off the story of the Little Mermaid, hence why her combat skirt here, yes, combat skirt, that's the thing in this universe, is shaped a little like a mermaid fin. That and the mosaic picture sleeve on her arm help attribute to that inspiration. Most recently though, to create a common theme between the teammates, her inspiration is also taken after Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. That, and I've always had this thing where I covered her right eye because this incident from her past damaged it somehow, but I never elaborated on what happened to it. I guess I just kinda did it for the aesthetic. Okay, so semblances. Semblances in RWBY are these special abilities that everybody has, like something in particular that boosts their fighting chance in the battlefield. Saige's in particular is nicknamed Athena's Guard after her relation to the Greek goddess Athena. The best that I can relate it to is an adrenaline rush. So when Saige herself is battered physically or emotionally, her semblance activates and, for that matter, flourishes. It hardens her muscles and numbs her pain receptors so she can throw hands like a motherfucker without feeling the effects until after it deactivates. In a word, she can punch through a brick wall with no problems. On a good day, she could destroy an Atlesian paladin with a headbutt. After the cooldown though, she experiences a blood sugar crash and becomes a little delirious, so her friends have to have snacks on standby to help her replenish her energy. Okay, her weapon. That is one of the most important things about these characters here. When I originally designed Saige's weapon, it was a Panabas sword that could turn into a submachine gun. The idea was fine at the time. I liked it because the blade was shaped like a wave, which fit with her whole Little Mermaid motif, but since we're ditching that, I decided to give it an overhaul. I mean, the old design, it was clunky, weird, it didn't look right, there was no clear place to grab onto it, it just didn't make sense. So the new version is a saber sword that can turn into an assault rifle, and I actually like this version a lot more. It's cleaner, smoother, she can actually fight with it, and it matches the rest of her outfit, so I like this a lot. Alright, so right off the bat, I knew what I wanted to do for Saige's redesign because, let's face it, her old design was kind of all over the place. There was just too much to look at with her old design, so there was really never one place for your eye to settle on in this picture. I don't know why I even did this, because on her right arm, I gave her that water mosaic sleeve pattern and I carried it through her stocking, which honestly was just too much in itself. And on her left arm, I gave her this iron armband, which went all the way down her forearm, which it wasn't really clear how it moved with her. It honestly looked like it would trap her arm in place rather than move with her, so the tunic design itself was fine, but I don't know, it's 2020, it's time for a change, it's gotta go. Anyway, so her new design, first thing I fixed was the hair. So immediately I moved the part over to the left side of her head, her left, our right, and I made it all one length so your eye could smoothly flow from the top of her head to the bottom of her toes pretty much. What I did to fix her tunic, kind of, it was just time for a change, and because Saige is a more modest character, she now has short sleeves and a sweetheart neckline tunic in this case, and I kept kind of the coattails of the old design just because I liked how it turned out, and I gave her this asymmetrical hidden belt kind of thing, so it's visible on one side but not on the other, and I like to think that that's because there's like maybe a hidden slit in the back of the tunic where it kind of disappears into. I just think it's really nice, and it gives an opportunity to show off that nice design on the side of her waist. which I'm actually really fond of, to be honest. But I carry that design throughout her armor because the old one was designed mostly with aesthetics in mind, not really with combat suitability as a priority, so I had to change that right away. So now she's got arm braces and greaves over her calves, I think. Yeah, I think that's the right body part. But also she needed some actual arch support because previously she was just wearing some weird looking ballet slipper kind of thing. So now she has like a nice pair of knee-high sturdy boots with a baby heel and everything. I just really like the way it turns out. But as for that mosaic sleeve pattern, I actually kept that on her stocking, but I made it a little more angular. So one, it'd be easier to draw, and two, it looked more like glass because shockingly, her last name Crystallos or Crystallo is also the name of a type of glass, which I actually found really interesting. So I'm kind of leaving behind the elements of being based on the Little Mermaid and now transitioning more toward that kind of. So there's a little more, you know, Greek elements here to kind of attribute to her inspiration. So I really like how this new design looks and everything. It looks and feels more like Saige to me, you know? So the next character on the roster is Saoirse. Twi's character, who's had so many names over the years, it's kind of hard to keep track of what we call her now. But in the case of RWBY, because the names have to mean or sound like colors, we named her Tana. So Tana here actually ended up as Saige's partner during the class initiation, which is this thing where the students fight to form a team and prove their combat skills. You know, kind of like a sorority house hazing pretty much. Based on my brief research, Tana is a name that translates to fire or star goddess, which is really fitting considering her design and lore here. Originally, when we designed her, her name was just Tara, which means star in Sanskrit, and her outfit's main color scheme was purple, but I'm not sure how that translates here. Tana, like Saige, is a pretty mellow lass, but also is kind of a grumpy motherfucker, so she's quicker to irritation than her partner and sometimes butts heads with her other teammates. She has a chip on her shoulder, so she really isn't one to take shit from anybody, and if somebody does try to give her shit, then she will gladly run them into the ground. To fit with the team theme, however, her character inspiration comes from Ares, the god of war, which actually fits pretty well considering her name and the meaning behind it. I think I'm in love with Tana's semblance the most out of all these characters. So we designed it back when Undertale had just come out, so fittingly, we named it Determination. So when Tana activates it, she can summon a literal wall of fire around her and the opponent of her choosing, and use this to basically initiate an isolated encounter or one-on-one fight. The look of the wall in particular is akin to a coliseum, hence the whole God of War aesthetic. As a side effect though, she gets this glowing heart symbol on her chest, and the more determined she is to confront her opponents, the harder it beats and the brighter it glows. But if she starts losing focus or takes a serious beating, it starts to shrink and will deactivate her semblance when it goes out. The weapon Tana uses in combat is a glaive, which is like a spear, but cooler. Think of Sailor Saturn, but the glaive can also turn into a sniper rifle. It's an aesthetic in itself to switch from sitting comfortably on a rooftop and doming Grim one by one to leaping into battle and throwing down with the staff-type weapon in close quarters. Not to mention the no-scope she could pull off. God, why didn't I illustrate this sooner? Okay, now the next three characters is where we're starting to get into some serious overhaul territory. The first one being Tana. Now, her old outfit, it was more inspired by that street kid life path aesthetic, so I just gave her a tank top, cargo shorts, sneakers, and then whatever armor she could probably find over all that. And it was fine originally, but it was all purple and white, and there was no way to justify that with the meaning of her name behind it, so we basically tossed that whole thing out the window. And now that her color is red and she's based off Ares, the god of war, I could have a little more fun with this. But the first thing that we changed per Twi's request was actually to make her a faunus, specifically a goat faunus. Or ram faunus, I keep forgetting which. But she's got this really cool pair of curly goat horns on her head, and I love how it looks. I honestly think it's great. But we also made her hair longer and tied it up this time, so now she's got some swept over side bangs, a little bit of fringe on the side of her head, and a really long flowing ponytail. And honestly, I could see how some people probably in Remnant would confuse her with Pira Nikos. I can imagine we can get some humor out of that, so. But you got all that, and then because Tana, like Saige, values modesty when it comes to combat suitability for clothing and everything, she's totally covered in this case. So the only thing that we kept from her old design was this purple sash around her waist, which is a little lower now, to be honest. But that's the only thing that we kept from the original version. That's it. The rest, she's got like a cool red looking tunic, robe, whatever the fuck you want to call that. It's all long sleeves, and then she's got those tucked into like a pair of brown leather gloves with some fur sticking out at the ends. You know, she's got black pants, she's got a sturdy pair of hiking boots because, you know, less is more. A little bit of simplicity never hurt anybody in that regard. But because she is more close quarters in this case and long range, I figured if she's going hand to hand with some of these enemies, considering her semblance powers and everything, I thought she definitely needed some armor. In this case, I gave her some gold gold greaves and knee pads. I give her a pauldron, which is a piece of shoulder armor, and some wrist braces, because you never want to break your wrist while you're flinging your glaive at 50 miles an hour in close quarters, you know? But to tie it all together, I put on a gold diamond belt buckle around her waist, and it all kind of keeps that in place, you know? It keeps the tunic from unraveling and the sash from falling down, and I don't know, just something there for a little bit of unity. Overall, this, in order to keep her weapon stashed when it's not being used, she has a holster where I can imagine her weapon kind of magnetizes to her back when she's not using it, and that's really cool that she can just pull it out at a moment's notice. So I like that a lot. But yeah, I really like this new aesthetic I've got going on with her whole design, and it definitely feels like somebody you would not want to fuck with if you saw them coming at you. Next character, Roheline Shiba, better known by his nickname Raine, has a name of Estonian origin that directly translates to the color green. Also, conveniently enough, his last name Shiba means brushwood in Japanese, so all that fits with his more earth tone aesthetic. His outfit design predominantly takes after Assassin's Creed because originally his whole theme was based off of Robin Hood. However, to fit with his team, his inspiration comes from Apollo, the Greek god of music, art, healing, and enlightenment. As the only male member of Team Storm, you might think Raine has it kind of good, sharing a dorm room with 3 lovely women. Well, yes and no. While Saige keeps him in check every so often, he has a tendency to butt heads with Tana due to their clashing personality traits. Raine has a good heart where it counts, but also stresses that a good heart is one of the most important things he looks for in other people. He'll only truly trust and respect someone when they prove that they're willing to go to the ends of the earth to defend what means most to them. Other than that, he likes to keep a pretty positive atmosphere in the room, so he isn't one to shy away from a good joke or make a little jab at something. He knows where the boundary line is though, and knows not to cross it given the time and place. But the reason that Raine goes by Raine and not Roheline is because his little brother Orin has a lisp that makes his full name difficult to pronounce. So cool! Okay, so in sharp contrast to the complicated designs for the other girls' weapons, Raine's weapon is a simple bow and arrow, but it can split apart into what I believe are a pair of Kama swords. Because of the string that's also attached, it can be used as a pair of grappling hooks, which are great for mobility and some sweet swing attacks. Now, because Raine has a more earth-based aesthetic, his semblance is themed accordingly. To put it simply, Raine can manipulate, trees? Or wood, I guess. Okay, the technical term is arbormancy. He can warp and manipulate the tree's shape to assist him, like extending branches to catch him, or elongating the roots to trip up opponents. His power, though, is limited to the size of the tree in question. When he does this, he gets this really cool, green, glowing, veiny pattern that extends down through his hands or his feet and across the thing that he's making contact with, so it kind of looks like he's becoming part of the root system, which I think is pretty damn cool, actually. Okay, so Raine's redesign is actually the most interesting to me because his outfits have taken the most of a beating over the years compared to the others, as in he went through the most changes before we finally settled on something. So when I originally drew him, it was just a basic green button-down shirt with some black pants, I think, and an archer glove. The next version of his volume 1 through 3 outfit I did, it was more inspired by Assassin's Creed, so it was like a white robe with black pants and some like brown leather boots and stuff, and it was alright, but again, we need an update at this point. But the next version of him we actually drew, which inspired this new version the most, is his volume 4 design. I mean, it was fine, but I can't really make sense of how the waist fabric kind of works with each other, I guess. And there were some random strings just kind of keeping everything in place, which it's fine from the waist up, but from the waist down, it's a little bulky. I mean, I can't be mad because my buddy Raine actually designed this one. However, this particular image you're seeing right here, which I'm sure is up on the screen right now, was actually drawn by another RWBY OC maker back in the day who I believe I commissioned back then, but I believe they were the person who made that RWBY OC Team Digital. So because Raine is an archer and he takes a little bit after Apollo, another one of the Greek gods, we actually gave him something a little more earthbound, I guess, or a little more in tune with nature, I guess. So now he has one of those asymmetrically zipped up green shirts, black pants, black leather gloves, which for some reason the thumb, index finger, and pinky are all cut out. And then we give him a brown jacket with this fur-lined collar, so it looks more akin to a pretty standard leather jacket, which I honestly like this a lot better. It's a lot more clear, so what kind of jacket it is. There's a lot of brown with this outfit, so he's got this brown leather armor over his legs, like all the way up his legs. This dude is wearing thigh-high boots compared to the other girls, who are maybe like knee-high at best. So thigh-high brown boots, and then he's got like a cool like green heel on the back of his heels, and the whole thing is plated with bronze or gold, I believe, on the toes and the heels. There's a little bit of sturdiness there, so it's not like he's totally going in on bare feet, you know? Yeah, he looks a lot more like an archer, but the big change that we made this time for his volume 1 through 3 design, we gave him a long-ass braid down the back, because why the fuck not? Raine's outfit, honestly, one of the coolest outfits of this whole team. Well, actually, they're all cool in their own regard, but his is just the most stand-outish, I believe, or the most down-to-earth. Puns. They're gonna kick my ass for that later, aren't they? Okay, The last member of Team Storm is a lovely lady named Mira Anumati, the only one on the team who grew up outside any major cities or kingdoms. She and her family run a temple where they pay tribute to the lunar goddess Anumati, who's actually based off a real deity from Hindu mythology. The interesting thing here is that Mira doesn't actually have a surname, so she used Anumati as a substitute. I guess a more accurate name would be Mira of Anumati, but that's all technical stuff. Her name Mira translates to ocean in Sanskrit, which explains why her color palette is mostly blue, and the name Anumati, in addition to meaning moon, is also the name of a Hindu lunar goddess in real life. Because she lived in such an isolated environment, Mira is very curious about the world and wants to explore all kinds of new things. It'd definitely be a major understatement to say that she's super excited that Raine is her partner because she wants to study a lot from him and her other teammates. The weapon that helps Mira in battle the most is a pair of revolvers, which also double as chain sights. There's a rope mechanism inside the gun, so she can partly detach the blades and swing them around like nobody's business every which way. Mira's not as much a physical fighter like the rest of her teammates. She's quick, efficient, and light on her feet, partly in thanks to her semblance. The most accurate thing I can call her semblance is wind creation. Mira can create gusts of wind around her for any number of purposes, like giving herself a boost, picking up speed, dodging projectiles, or doing flips all over the place. Now, Mira's old design, it was more typical anime protagonist looking. It was a cold shoulder dress with a blue sash and some ankle booties, and that was fine, but again, it's time for a change, because I actually will be honest, in all the renditions that Twi has written of Macy/Mira over the years, is that this is the only iteration where she takes more after Japanese culture and inspiration for that matter, whereas in every iteration after that, she actually takes more based off of South Asian culture, which I believe pertains to the Indian subcontinent, I think. But her design is largely Hindi in this case. So first thing we did was actually gave her a skin tone that more suited the role, and we gave her long ass hair. It's actually long and wavy now, which we all fucking love. But we sideswept her bangs a little bit. It's still blunt cut like the original, but it just makes more sense in terms of how it's drawn now. And because she is more light on her feet, and she's not really a hand-to-hand kind of combat fighter, she uses her semblance and her weapons more so than anything else, so she doesn't need nearly as much armor as her teammates. So in this case, we just gave her a salwar, which I believe is the term for the kind of tunic from that kind of culture. Under that salwar, she's got a pair of leggings and flats because, again, she's light on her feet. She needs something that can float with her, kind of. You know what I mean? Most of the details in her outfit are actually on the salwar itself. It's just this really pretty floral mandala pattern, I guess I'll call it, but that's pretty much where all the details concentrated in this case. The most combat-related thing about her outfit has to be the gun holsters around her shoulders in this case, and I can imagine they clasp in the back, but yeah, she has a pair of pistols that she uses for her weapons, so it only makes sense to store them there. And then to top off the design, I give her a really pretty choker around her neck. She looks really elegant and pretty and just light as a feather, and I think she looks absolutely awesome. And with that, I think we're officially done. This was actually a lot of fun to do because these guys definitely deserved an overhaul on their designs, and I waited until now to do it for some reason. But yeah, this was definitely long overdue, and now that it's done, I'm really happy with how they turned out because I think this is more accurate when it comes to the RWBY universe lore and just the rules of making characters when it comes to that. And their new team dynamic is more pleasing to the eye, and they have more fitting backstories and everything, and just they look cohesive now. I love it. So yeah, if you guys want to see like a part 2 where I redesign some more of our old RWBY characters, then leave your thoughts in the comments below because I actually really do love this series a lot. I know it's had a lot of its ups and downs over the years, but I've been like heavily invested in this universe for like the last 8 years or so, regardless of how it's gone. So I don't even know what to say at this point. I think I'm done.